Wild recreation, the intersection between herpetoculture, ecology, and art. Through this lens, I created this habitat for these lizards. These are Emerald Tree Skinks, Lamprolepis smaragdina, an arboreal lizard native to Southeast Asia, primarily the Philippines. How on earth was I supposed to recreate that? This vivarium needed to be vertically oriented and designed to replicate a tree. It needed high humidity with efficient airflow, appropriate lighting on a day and night cycle, flora and microfauna. Let's get started. Cork tile was my choice of background. It's simple and easy to install, yet looks natural and is reminiscent of the side of a tree. You know, where tree skinks live. I used 100% silicone to adhere it to the glass. I applied the silicone directly to the glass, fit the cork tile into place, and pressed it down firmly using various weights. I allowed it to cure in this exact position for 24 hours. I repeated these steps on the other two sides of the enclosure. Since Emerald Tree Skinks cannot stick to glass like many geckos can, this will allow them to have much more usable space, and I think it'll look a lot better in the end as well. It was now time to brainstorm the hardscape layout. This is arguably one of the most important steps in the building process. I'm always sure not to rush this step because I want my vision to come to life with the hardscape that I have available to me. It needs to look natural, cohesive, and be functional for the particular species that will be inhabiting the enclosure. That's why it's so important to have a good understanding of a species before you design an enclosure for them. You need to know their behaviors, their different tendencies, and how they interact with their environment. I created a drainage layer at the bottom of the enclosure using leca, which is also called hydroton or simply clay pebbles. I placed a piece of mesh screen on top of the drainage layer in order to keep it isolated from the overlying soil. The drainage layer will serve as a reservoir for excess water and will ensure better health of the plants and soil. Speaking of soil, I created a custom blend using the following ingredients: organic soil made with forestry compost, sphagnum peat moss, and aged softwood bark, horticultural wood charcoal, Exoterra substratum, which is a bioactive volcanic substrate, and sphagnum moss. I spread a thin layer of horticultural wood charcoal on top of the drainage layer, which will help purify the water as it passes through. I combined all the ingredients together to create a nutrient-rich and well-draining soil. I used sphagnum moss to fill in any gaps in the background. I arranged various cork rounds and cork branches into their predetermined positions. While I usually enjoy planting my vivariums with a variety of species, this time I'll only be planting one species to give the illusion that the skinks are inhabiting one particular tree, a ficus tree, Ficus benjamina, which shares the same natural range as the emerald tree skink. Once the ficus was planted, I added another cork round. Since cork rounds are hollow, they'll offer more usable space and shelter to my skinks. I scattered live oak leaf litter at the bottom of the enclosure. The shape of the leaves are very similar to the ficus leaves, so I thought it tied everything together nicely. The leaf litter will serve as both nutrition and shelter for the microfauna. It will also help retain moisture at the bottom of the enclosure. Next, I hot glued some dried sponge mushrooms to the background and to the wood in the enclosure. Many species of fungi will grow on wood in high moisture environments. Not only will these accessorize the vivarium, they will also serve as little platforms for the skinks to climb on. I placed small branches and twigs around the enclosure to break up the appearance of the cork and make it look more natural. Additionally, they will encourage my skinks to exercise their balance as they navigate over surfaces that are more unstable. I used silicone to adhere patches of moss throughout the enclosure. I used it to conceal imperfections and to contribute to the overall natural aesthetic of the enclosure. I scattered small pieces of corkwood at the bottom of the enclosure since microfauna, especially isopods, tend to hide beneath decaying wood on the forest floor. Speaking of isopods, let's start stalking the microfauna in this vivarium, starting with the beautiful Porcellanides pruinosis Oreo crumble isopod. These are small terrestrial crustaceans that inhabit the soil and feed on decaying organic matter. They play an important role in the long-term health of the plants in the vivarium. Another addition to this micro cleanup crew are springtails, tiny little invertebrates who, like isopods, feed on decaying organic matter. They're also known to feed on fungi and mold. Mold tends to present itself in areas of high moisture, so having springtails around in this vivarium will be very helpful. I placed a water dish in the bottom right corner. For the most part, my tree skinks drink when I mist them. They'll lap up the little drops of water on the leaves and on their bodies, but I have seen them drink out of a water dish a few times, and I feel better knowing that they always have access to fresh water. In terms of lighting, I'm using the Arcadia Shade Dweller, which will provide UVB to the skinks, paired with the Arcadia Jungle Dawn LED bar, which emits full spectrum lighting, benefiting both the skinks and the plants. Finally, I'm using a small halogen bulb to offer my skinks a suitable basking site at the top of the enclosure. So majestic. Now enjoy this chaotic montage of my skinks eating.